Welcome to Sravz technical series. In today's session, we'll use OpenAI to create a Q&A application on Sravz financial data. In Sravz, we have a lot of financial data. So for today's session, we'll just take it as a POC and we'll give very limited amount of information and then try to answer some questions using ChatGPT. So for today's session, we'll just take two mutual funds, the first one and this one. And these mutual funds have the information displayed here, and we have the raw data which is in the JSON format, which is displayed here as a HTML, well-formatted HTML. So we'll send just these two mutual funds to ChatGPT today and try to ask some questions on this data. So this is the high-level architecture. These three boxes we have discussed before: web browser, socket, Node.js, NSQ messaging queue, which we discussed in the historical ticker plant, Rust-based historical ticker plant. So you could go in that section how we did these three. Today, instead of using Rust, we'll use Python NSQ reader writer because OpenAI supports Python SDK, which we'll use. And then for now, we have Redis vector store, but at a later point, we might change it and use something else. So we'll have a Redis vector store. We'll use Airflow to create embeddings for the data, and then our data will be in AWS S3. AWS S3 will have the JSON files, these JSON files I just showed you, and we'll pull the JSON files from AWS S3 and then create the embeddings for those. And then once we have the vector embeddings, we'll use Python's SDK for OpenAI and ask questions in ChatGPT. So that's about the architecture. Before I go into the details, I'll just do a quick demo. So I have the code base open here. Now I want to ask ChatGPT this question: for this fund, what is the fund summary? This is our first fund. I go to the screen. This is our first fund. I'll show the details here. So VZ1. So I'm asking for this fund, what is the fund summary? So for this fund, what is the fund summary? We already have the fund summary, but we want to use ChatGPT. Provided this JSON file is will ChatGPT be able to give us the fund summary through Q&A session. So before I run the Python script, let me just ask the same question to ChatGPT. So we'll take this. So ChatGPT cannot answer the question because it doesn't have the real-time information, which is expected. Given mutual fund, what is the fund summary? It couldn't answer. So now what I'll do is I'll provide this JSON file, this raw JSON file to ChatGPT. I'm doing that through my Python script. I'll describe how I'm doing that in a bit. So I'll give this information to ChatGPT. Now ChatGPT will be smart enough because it has the information. It has to just pull the answer from the provided information. So I'll do that. For this one, what's the fund summary? I'll run that. Question: what is the fund summary? The fund summary for fund with the Open Fiji and all is this one. So it's able to pull the information from the provided JSON file. So that's how, given some information, ChatGPT can answer the question based on the provided information. So how do we provide the information? We do that through vector embeddings. So without going into the technical details of vector embeddings, I'll just give you a high-level analogy on how vector embeddings work. Suppose you have a book. You give this whole book to ChatGPT and ask a question from the book. ChatGPT is smart enough, it'll read the whole book and give you the answer. But there's a lot of data you have given just for one question. So ChatGPT has to go through the whole book, lot of data, lot of money, lot of time. So instead of that, what you could do is, if you know there are 2 pages or 3 pages where your where the answer for your question is, you can just give those 2 or 3 pages to ChatGPT and then say, given these 2 or 3 pages, answer this question. Now ChatGPT has to only go through 3 pages, lesser data. So answer will be quick and cheaper. Now, if you want to be more enterprising, you can, and if you know which paragraph the answer is, you can just give that paragraph to ChatGPT and then ask the question. Now, since it's just a paragraph, it's quick to answer, lesser data, much cheaper. So now you have to do this trade-off. How much information you want to give to ChatGPT so that ChatGPT can give you the correct answer quicker and also not process much data. So you can do that through vector embeddings. So now I'll describe how vector embeddings are done. If I show you an example, you might understand it much easier. So in our case, we had these JSON files. We have these 2 JSON files. I created the vector embeddings for these JSON files, and then I saved them to embeddings.csv. So for example, I have these 2 files. When I concatenated those 2 files, I got 3 files. I got huge text. Now I truncated that text into smaller pieces so that ChatGPT can understand. So yeah, my chunks were enough size so that OpenAI can understand. And then for each chunk, I created the corresponding vector. So this is my text and this is my embedding. It's a CSV file. So for this text up to here, this is the embedding. Now let's skip the discussion of what an embedding is. Embedding is just a vector representation of the text. Because machines don't understand text, we give them this. This is what machines understand, this is what we understand. So we have to do a mapping between our text and the vector. Similarly, for the next chunk, I got the vector embeddings like this, right? These are the embeddings, comma separated CSV file. Similarly, for the third one, I got the vector embeddings. Now, when I ask question to ChatGPT, for example, the question I asked here, for this fund, what is the fund summary? I can just provide this JSON file and get the answer. I don't have to provide this JSON file, right? Because this has the answer. Furthermore, this JSON file is too huge. I truncated into 2 pieces. So if I could provide only the first piece, then I would be providing much lesser data, and then even then I can expect an answer. So through vector embeddings, what we can do is find the nearest neighbor to a vector. So my question was, if you go through the question, for this fund, what is the fund summary? I'll create a vector representation of my question. Once I get the vector representation of that, using a method which we'll discuss later, I can find the nearest vectors which are closest to this question vector. Once I know that one, then I can go back to my embeddings. So I have 3 vectors. Of these 3 vectors, I know there's the answer is only in one string. So one vector will be the closest to my question. So once I know a list of vectors which are closest to my question, I can take only those vectors, and from those vectors I'll get back the original string, and then I'll pass only that string to ChatGPT. So that is the purpose of vector embedding. So you have your book. We'll go back to the book analogy. You have your book. You truncated that book into small chunks, and for each chunk you got your vectors, which is called vector embedding. Then now you had a question. You converted your question into a vector. Then you took your vector and you found the closest vectors you got from the book. So the book might, say for example, produces 1,000,000 vectors. Then your question might, the vectors nearest to your question might be, say for example, 5 or 10. Then you get only 5 or 10 vectors which are closest to your question vector. Then you trace back the string, which is the representation of vector. Then say you get 5 to 10 vectors, which is equal to 5 to 10 string chunks. All you concatenate all those strings into a, and then you pass that to ChatGPT. So instead of passing the whole book, now you're passing much fewer strings to ChatGPT. And those strings could be within a page or wherever it is, or it could be into multiple pages, which due to this vector representation, you are able to pull out all the relevant information from all over the book and you gave it. So instead of, so the vectors could be anywhere, but those vectors are nearest to the question vector you generated. So that's how vector embeddings work. And then we need Redis, because Redis will provide you that logic to find the vectors closest to your question vector. So you come up with a random question, convert that into vector, send it to Redis. Since Redis is a vector store, it can give you the vectors closest to your question, get all those vectors, concatenate, form a string, send it to ChatGPT. So that's how the whole workflow works. Now, I won't go into the details of the Python source code. You could go that at your own time, and if you have any questions, you could ask me. So I'll just at a high level give you the process. So in create embeddings, like I mentioned, say I have a book, I divided that book into chunks, then each chunk I send it to, for each chunk I need a vector representation. So instead of sending one chunk of the book to OpenAI and get the vector representation, OpenAI allows us to do batching. So we do a batch. So instead of say sending one page, maybe 10 pages at a time, we send it to OpenAI. OpenAI will give us the embeddings for all those chunks. Then we put all the chunks in a string, and then using pandas, we'll just save that original text and its corresponding embedding into a CSV file. So that's what we are doing here. And strings ranked by relatedness. Now, like I mentioned in that book example, you had a question, you pass question vector, then you find all the vectors closest to your question. So we'll do that through this function. There's some logic here. You could go through that one. At a later point, we'll discuss these cosine, nearestness, etc. But for today, you just have the source code. You can go through it. And then once we have the vectors, we form the string. Then we create a prompt like this, saying, use the below mutual fund information to answer the question. If answer cannot be found, right, I could not answer. Then this is my query. This is my query. Then I'll pass my query and all the strings I got from the vectors to OpenAI, and then OpenAI will answer the question. So like that, I had multiple questions. So I'll just run one more question. Say, for example, I have for AA, AAA, CX, what are the bottom 10 holdings? So let me just run that. For AAA, so it's giving the bottom 10 holdings, and the bottom 10 holdings are correct. If I go here for AAAX, top 10 holdings, if I go to the last page, 4AX, this one is CX, so it's the other one. Top holdings, right? I said bottom 10, so it gave Government National Mortgage Association is 1.99, Government National Mortgage Association 0.8% is 1.99, so it's 1.20. We are rounding up here, but it's able to pull the top 10, bottom 10 holdings. It's the last page. So that's how we do Q&A session with OpenAI. In a later session, we'll discuss more topics around this ChatGPT and Q&A application. So with that, I'll close today's session. If you have any questions or comments, please reach me out in the Q&A section in the documentation page or in the YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.